Welcome, everyone, to our next episode of Inside the Teacher Studio, where we celebrate the artistry and creativity of educators. And today, I am joined by someone that I'm going to let introduce himself. So please introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay. First of all, I'm glad to be here. I am Ernest Black. I go by the last name Black, one word, not hard to forget. Proud Detroiter, um, proud Black man. I'll say that. Um, Proud overall.
Nice.
I moved through life with the sense of honesty and fairness, which is annoying to people, by the way.
Say more about that.
Because people often just want to hear what they want to hear.
Mm.
And, I'm a rule follower. I may not like the rule, but it is the rule. So until we change the rule, this is what we have to operate with.
Interesting.
As a classroom teacher, and you may not want to know all this, but as a classroom teacher, my students would say, well, that's not fair. I didn't want to do that. Like, I don't want to stop at red lights, but it's the rule. Why am I stopping at a red light and there's nobody else around? Why can't I just drive through if nobody's there? But that's not the rule, right? You can get it, right?
I'm gonna have to follow up on that in a minute.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your introduction, please.
And that was my introduction. So
Okay. So some of you may be wondering why we share the same last name. So I invited Dr. Black onto Inside the Teacher Studio because he and I share parenting duties with some very grown men. So Dr. Black and I are used to be married, and we have two amazing sons, Dominic and Khalik, who will probably be embarrassed because we'll probably talk about them during this. But anyway, Dr. Black is an amazing educator, and we'll talk a little bit about your current role in a minute. But my first question to you is, when did you first fall in love with education?
I'll start by saying that because I fell in love with education when I was an educator.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I became an educator because of the Million Man March. I was young-ish, still in my 20s. I had a college degree, but I didn't have like a career. Like I had jobs, and I was trying to figure out how best to serve people. And I went to the Million Man March, and one of the statements there was, go back in your community and make it better or whatever. I didn't have anything that I didn't have any money I could donate to anything. But I was like, you know what? I think I could be a teacher. And that's the path that led me down, teaching. When I fell in love with it, I was already teaching. I was at a school where we taught. And
Go Wadsworth Lions.
Are they Lions?
I think so.
Okay, all right. So I was at the school. It was maybe my second year, and I got pulled into the principal's office. And her question was, "How are your scores so high? How are your standardized test scores so much higher than the rest of the school?" And I didn't think she was accusing me of cheating, but then I was like, okay, am I in trouble? But no, she was like, no, because there were no testing irregularities. Later in life, I worked in the testing unit, and you can see testing irregularities.
Right.
So I wasn't in trouble. But she just asked, what did I do differently than I guess what everybody else is doing? And that's when I got to the point where I'm like, hey, I'm kind of good at this.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing it. My students are getting something out of it. So that's when I fell in love with teaching at that moment.
Nice. Was there something specific that you think attributed to your success in that department, where the kids were clearly thriving to where they could show it on the
It
standardized
it
test?
was just a lot of discipline. We followed the rules. I'm from Detroit. I had never heard of recess until I moved to California. So
Really?
yeah, we didn't have recess growing up. Came to school, your first break was lunch, and then the end of school. There was no recess. So I didn't understand the concept of going out for a break when we had just gotten to school. I'm like, we've been here an hour.
Right.
Let's go to work. It's not time for a break yet. So we didn't have recess in my class.
So they just, when you had to use the restroom, you went,
They just went to the restroom.
okay.
But and I also opened up the class an hour early
Mm-hmm.
for people who didn't get it. Were embarrassed about not getting it.
Yeah.
They needed to just talk to just me or whatever, or you can come and do your homework.
Right.
And I got that from a teacher that I had in eighth grade who had just opened up her classroom earlier so that, we weren't outside in the cold. Again, I'm from Detroit. So.
Right. Right. That's interesting. So do you think it was just kind of, you just did what you knew, like in terms of having folks in early, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Originally, yes. I mean, there was no pedagogy to it. I didn't have a credential at the time. I was
right.
still working toward a credential slowly. So I just did what, I thought was helpful
Mm-hmm.
in a way that it wasn't mandated, like you didn't have to come, but if
Right.
I was available, if you did, but you also couldn't say, when it's time to turn it in, I didn't get it or I didn't do it because
Mm-hmm.
it's not available. So you should have
Right.
been in this space.
Right. Did you have students that tried to pull that one, but then they
Oh, yeah.
realized, and then that made them start coming? Like, did they learn from their mistakes?
Sometimes, I mean, once their parents found out,
Oh,
their parents would escort them to my door.
got it. Got it. They're like, you need to be here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, but sometimes I could see them playing on the playground.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this isn't going to end well because I know you haven't done your homework.
Right. Right. Right.
Try to tell me something. And I'm very strict. I'm a very strict person. I'm a very structured person. So if I've given you these opportunities, you should probably take them.
Right. Right. I can hear you now talking to them. It's funny because I know a lot about you, and I feel like there's certain things about your story that I don't necessarily know. So hopefully those will come out. So you told me when you fell in love with education. Tell me a little bit about your experiences as a young learner.
Me okay.
Yes, you as a young learner.
I liked school. School was very nurturing for me.
How?
Probably because I grew up in Detroit and the time where everybody was Black. So all my teachers were Black. All my very extremely nurturing. They would talk to you about college and what it might look like, and these things are going to happen once you leave here. My first experience with dealing with white people was college. And I was like, oh my God, this is nothing like the world I grew up in. And they were just so very different. But our teachers had tried to prepare us for those things because they knew we had to go out. But I liked school. I was smart. I was, back in those days, they would break you up into the smart class and the next and the next group and the next group. I don't think they do that anymore.
They called that tracking when we were coming up as teachers.
Yeah. But and a lot of that tracking, was along racial lines as well, which is not something I had to deal with because we were all Black.
Right.
But I was in the smart class and I had the trajectory, and teachers saw that trajectory and other students saw that trajectory. So school was really, I enjoyed school probably until high school.
And what changed then?
High school, it wasn't that same nurturing piece. I went to what do they call it? College prep high school.
Hmm.
So we didn't have, we only had intramural sports. We didn't, my first 3 years, I think we got sports like my senior year. Um, and that wasn't the issue. I mean, that was my first time having white teachers was in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was just the structure was a little bit different.
Hmm.
I it wasn't the same nurturing environment, I'll
Right.
say. It was okay. I,
Hmm.
I survived, but
Right.
it wasn't the same type of schooling that I had had before. And some of those teachers really thought I was, a little uppity, too smart for my own good. And
Uh-huh.
I'm just using words that they said.
What were
Um,
the words they said?
mhm.
Oh, wow.
I had a vice principal once tell me that he would call my college that I had gotten accepted to use his white accent and tell them to revoke my admission. Yeah, that was high school.
Wow. Okay.
So that's not the teacher I wanted to be. Like,
Right.
oh, I'm not going to
Right.
try to step on anybody's dreams or anything
Right.
like that. I do want to give them opportunity to grow and make, maybe this isn't the best decision. Let's look at some other options. But I'm
Hmm.
not going to step on your dreams.
Right. So you told me a little bit about the nurturing environment of your pre-high school days, and that you were on that trajectory, to what I would call like the higher classes, if you will.
Yeah.
That's what they used to call them, right? Um, but what was that like for you as the learner in the room? Like, did it come easy for you?
Yeah.
You said you're very disciplined, so you didn't really struggle to get those good grades. Okay. Did it ever get harder?
No,
No. So college all the way through was just
not
easy for
really.
you.
No, I didn't get the best grades, especially like in high school and college,
Hmm.
because I reckon. And if there are students listening to this, don't mimic this. This isn't what you should do. Because I recognize that I could do well the first half of the semester and not have to go to class the second half. I
Right.
would come on test days, anything that was relevant to passing. And I did that in college as well. That's not the best idea for, for doing well in school. But it also shows that I really didn't need to to
Right.
go in
Right.
order to get at least a B or a C.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I didn't struggle until probably junior year in high school. And that's because I came up as a rule follower, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, just tell me whatever they told me to do, I did it. And so when it was time for me to think about how I needed to make decisions about my own learning, about how to pace myself through assignments, yada, 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 I didn't have all that, right? And
Mhm.
so without that work ethic, because I could go into a test not studying, not doing anything, and not only pass it, but ace it, it was really bad when it came to I needed to study, right? Because I
Yeah.
had no idea of how to break it up, right? So you always had that discipline. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about that teacher in high school that you're like, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Vice
Who was your
principal, what he was.
Oh, he was not the teacher. He was the okay. Wow. Who was your favorite teacher and why?
I have two.
Okay.
I had Miss Jackson, who was my fourth grade teacher. I wonder, was she my third and fourth grade teacher? I think, I know she was my fourth grade teacher. Mrs. Jackson, first of all, had my sister. That was the last teacher that we had in common, was Mrs.
Mm,
Jackson. Um, Mrs. Jackson set boundaries, and you adhere to those boundaries. But she was a really good teacher. I think she was a little bit ahead of her time when we talk about how we do pedagogy now, because I went to, elementary school in the 70s and everything was rote. You just repeated what they said.
Mhm.
But she allowed you to expand on that.
Mm.
So let's say you're doing a book report, maybe you make a diorama instead of the book report or something like that. So it was really interesting. I really enjoyed her class. And then there was Miss Akeem. Miss Akeem I had in middle school.
Mhm.
You know, um, teachers have a larger impact than we think.
Mhm.
Maybe that's why there are so many people who don't like them in America. Um, but Miss Akeem that was when I first got to be creative. She was my history and maybe English teacher or something like that.
Mhm.
And I got to write. I got to show different levels of creativity in her class. And she also directed, had conversations with my mother about which high school I should attend
Mhm.
and why. And I didn't know that until, I don't know, recently, actually,
Uh-huh.
that she had said that. And I'm like, that's why I got stuck at that high school.
Because you do want to go to where your sister went to school?
I did.
Okay.
In those days in Detroit, you had to test into those schools. There were two
Mhm.
schools you had to test into, and I passed the test for both.
Okay.
And I'm thinking I have a choice, and I had no choice.
Mom had decided because she
Yeah,
had talked to Miss Hakeem. She's like, nope, you're
okay,
going here.
yeah. And I
How
will
did
say Miss Akeem was a fairly
uh-huh.
younger teacher. Looking back on it now,
Mhm.
like she was in school getting her master's degree at the time.
Got it.
Remember that. Miss Jackson was an older teacher, not old, probably in her 40s at that time.
Mhm. So is Miss Jackson more on the what we would call a traditional teacher?
Yeah.
Okay. So interesting. So teachers that she was probably coming through like we were early in our educational career where we were still getting our credentials.
Oh yeah,
Or
Miss Hakeem, yeah, probably.
yeah, or just finished because I think that's a California thing where people don't have credentials and they're in the front of a classroom. So okay, so kind of like the pedagogical changes were happening even then.
Right,
Probably.
right.
Got it. Got it. So you talked about your attendance at the Million Man March is what brought you to the profession.
Uh-huh.
I know that you didn't come to the school that we taught together um, in a like that you were hired into a role at that school.
Right.
What made you decide to substitute first?
Because I wanted to see if I liked it.
Mm,
I wanted to see if this was a thing. Then I wanted to see, well, maybe I can just do this for a year and fulfill my commitment to the Million Man March.
got it.
I want to do something else. And I started in high school, which I did not like. Um, so I taught at different types of schools to
Uh-huh.
see, is one different than the other? Which would I like more? And I just ended up liking the elementary level better.
Got it.
And I thought I'd stay for a while.
So you ended up liking elementary, and
Mhm.
then I know you moved to middle.
I did. And I
Was it
really liked the middle.
you really liked it?
I did.
Okay, so you thought had you not taught middle as a sub?
I had.
You had.
I had some experiences as a middle school teacher, as a sub, which is why I kind of had an understanding of what happened there. But as a sub, you can teach anything. You
Right.
teaching algebra one day, you're teaching remedial English the next day.
Got it.
So it wasn't as linear as when I had my own classroom.
Right, right. Got it. That makes sense.
And
So
middle school, I'll say this: when high school teachers have a sub, they're gonna leave. They're like, "Oh, we got a sub today," and they're out the classroom.
so you get
Middle
to sit in an empty classroom.
Yeah. Middle school kids, they don't know how to do that yet. So when they have a sub, they're just wreaking havoc all day.
Right.
And that was a long day for a sub in middle school. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I don't know if you knew this, but this summer was the first time I taught Algebra 1 at a high school, and it was a credit recovery class. And I was scared out of my mind of these high school kids because I was like, I had heard stories, and literally I might have had 4 to 6 kids at a time in the classroom. And they were like completely disengaged on their phones. And, you know, every now and then I'm like, come on, guys, put it away. But towards the end, I was surprised because they were like, you need to teach here. And I'm like, really? You didn't seem very engaged, like you were learning anything. They're like, no, like we actually learn things. So like you need to be a teacher at the school so that we can learn some stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, you know, and thankfully, you know, again, shout out to UCLA Math Project and, you know, being an instructional coach and facilitator all over the state and states, because I got all of these great things in my bag of tricks that I just pulled out and trying to figure out how to teach a whole semester of Algebra 1 in 4 weeks. I was like, are you kidding me? But I'm glad I learned some things. So, hey, but I had no idea. I was scared of them high school kids. So I know that you're not in that same role, but before you came to your current role, with all the craziness in public education, what kept you here? Like what kept you in education?
You know, it's not always easy to stay.
Right. I've left a few times.
I've not left education, but I consider it all the time. Because rules change, laws change, and you're like, do I really want to keep doing this? This is, you know, not what I got in here for.
Yeah.
You know.
Sorry.
So what made me stay? Because I had varied experiences, I think, and that helps a lot. Ultimately, I was looking for a position where I could make the most impact. So I started as a classroom teacher, then I was out of classroom teacher, then I went to the district office, and then I got into teacher education. So, and each of those was for a reason. Like, okay, I could make more impact if I do this. I can make more impact if I do this. And I landed in teacher education because I felt that if we trained teachers properly, then maybe we wouldn't have so much unrest, you know, in our classrooms. Like if you,
I thought you meant with the teacher.
No, just, I mean, if you, like, you know, when our children were in high school, and I would go to the school, and you know, it's the era of the phones. They were, well, that they have phones and they're on their phones. And I would say, well, you know, either you're engaging or you're not.
Hello.
So, you know, when my teachers weren't engaging, we wrote notes.
Right.
You know, maybe we weren't on, you know, Snapchat or whatever, but we still weren't engaged. So either, or why don't you try to make the phone part of the lesson?
Right. Stop fighting it.
And those are just my thoughts. So, you know, when we try to train teachers, we try to teach them to embrace, you know, technology because it's ever changing and it's increasing. We try to teach them to engage the students where they are and not where you think they are, not where your favorite teacher was. And, you know, just try to teach, you know, with what the student brings into the classroom and start from there.
Right.
But also they're going to end at different places when they leave your classroom and be understanding of that.
That's, I think, the most, I don't know what's the word I would use, but it baffles me that we try to use the word equity, but then we have a one size fits all approach. And everybody's on the same level. And the way that I teach you is the same way that I teach this person over here. So yeah, I too, at some point had decided I wanted to be in teacher ed, but we're not there yet. So maybe soon. So tell us a little bit about your current role. What's your day job?
So I am the System-wide director is my title. I'm the system-wide director for a program called Cal State Teach, which is a multiple subject online teacher preparation program in California. Additionally, I work at the CSU Chancellor's office in the Department of Education, or whatever it may be called now. We change our name a lot. And there are 4 directors of education, and we each kind of handle very different things. So some of my other duties as assigned, as they say, is, dealing with increasing diversity in education. So you might see me on various panels, you might see me in various conferences, working toward that end. And there are probably some other things too.
Again, the other duties as assigned.
Yeah. But yeah, those are the main things.
For those that might be interested in joining the profession, is this only in a multiple subject, or do they have a single subject arm of it?
Only multiple subject. There is a single subject online program at Cal State East Bay.
Oh, okay.
And I think Cal State LA has an online special ed program.
Got it.
So part of my job is to know all those things, like not what my program is doing, but what every program is offering.
Got it. That's your work with the Chancellor's office. Okay, got it. So who were your main influences in where you are today in education?
Oh, hey, let me see.
Wait, let me tell you, while you're thinking about that, I was at a family party last night, and one of my cousins was like, Monica, what are you reading? And I'm like, I haven't read a fiction novel in a long time. I'm always reading teacher books. This is my latest one. Shout out to Kwame Sarpo-Mensah, because he's about to be we were supposed to have a live last week, but I had been sick. But all of mine are all these beasts in the education. So I don't know what novels are out there that I can read. But anyway, onto your influences and where you are right now.
There's not a lot of people on my same path. I mean, who did everything the way that I've done it.
Which is why you got that Trailblazer Award.
Yeah.
Talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. So I would have to say, there are some teachers that I think are exemplary. There's some teacher educators that I think are exemplary. And, there are some people, outside of education who have an influence on education that I think are exemplary. But I would have to say there was a teacher. So most of the people that I think I really align with are those that they made movies about.
Oh, like who?
So Marva Collins.
Okay.
And Marva Collins, as a side note, is from the same small town in Alabama that my parents were from.
Wow.
And I didn't know that until, I'm watching the movie. They're like, oh yeah, that's her. And you see Jaime Escalante. So you kind of get those,
right.
These people are thinking outside this traditional box that has been set for them and their students. And that's the kind of educator I wanted to be. And that's the kind of teacher educator that I wanted to be as well.
Right. I was a little scared when you first said that about the movies, because, there's all kinds of white savior roles out there.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, where's he going with it?
Yeah. I haven't seen those movies.
I haven't either.
I see something about Ron Clark came on my Instagram feed a few days ago. And I know he's the guy with the dancing and the blah, blah, blah. And, I don't know him, so I can't say anything positive or negative because I don't know him. But I will say that, being a really great teacher,
Hmm.
some dedication, and a little bit of a fight in you. You have to be
Hmm.
able to fight, your principal, who's like, I
Right.
remember getting written up because my classroom wasn't quiet. You know,
Where was that?
it was at middle school when I
Oh,
taught.
okay.
Yeah, they because they wanted a different type of environment, and I did not. I wanted it to be more interactive, and
Right.
that the students got something out of it.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of my main beefs with public school education is the whole focus on compliance
Yeah,
over um, just really amplifying the brilliance of our students, however that shows up. So,
what that is. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit. What brings you joy?
Okay. Um, was that one of the questions?
Yes,
Okay.
it was. We can come back to it if you want. You know what? Let's
No,
come back. Let's
for
come
that
back
one.
to it. You
I
want to
can
come
answer
back
it.
to it?
I can answer it.
Okay.
Okay. So, we have two grown children. I'm glad they're grown. Um, and I like who they are as men.
Right.
And that brings me a lot of joy that, we've
Yeah.
raised these really exceptional men, and
Yes.
they're just
Exceptional.
phenomenal men.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're going to be embarrassed that we're gushing about them, but like everywhere we go with them, I'm sure you hear how amazing they are. I mean, I've gotten my report card as a parent as they've become adults,
Yeah.
and I just like who they are. Like I like them as people, and the one that I thought was going to be more like kind of on the mean side. He's actually a really thoughtful, caring person, and I'm just like, "Oh, okay, empathy." And, but yeah, I mean, like, even last night, we were, like, driving to the family party, and we happened to be driving my parents' car, and it was, like, under half full, and he starts to pull into a gas station. He's like, "Oh, no, I'm not gonna let them drive around with, like, less than half a tank of gas." So he filled it up for them, and so I was like, "You know what? You're a really good kid." But both of them just, I mean, like you said, they are like a source of a lot of joy, just seeing how they've turned out. So, yay us.
Yeah.
So like I said, Inside the Teacher Studio is really about celebrating the artistry and creativity of educators. And a lot of that part of it has to do with, I don't think teachers understand or know when you ask them what do they bring to the table? What's your superpower? They don't know how to answer it. Like I remember one woman telling me my superpower is that I have a credential. I'm like, are you serious? Because there's so many people that don't have them, right? And I'm like, that's not, you didn't have to do much to get that credential. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, what did you do with it afterwards? And that was where her answer was. So, and a lot of it has to do with how you talked about you're a rule follower, right? But you have to be willing to go up against all of these rules that don't make sense. So even though you're a rule follower, it's nice to hear that you actually do push back against some of those rules, right? So I think some of the times, a lot of, we have to be creative and we have to be artistic in how are we going to do what needs to be done in this environment, right? So I'd love for you to think about like any time, like a specific time that you demonstrated artistry in your craft.
I can think of a few times, but
What's your
I'll
favorite?
oh, my favorite. You know, years ago, not that long ago, but a few years ago, I started to move our program, the teacher preparation program, toward a more, I want to use the right words here, just like more inclusive teaching practices.
What does that mean? That sounds like why are you choosing your words? This is the feisty one over here.
Because I want people to fully understand that it has nothing to do with who I am as a person, but who we need to educate as children.
Mm-hmm.
So making this change where I said, okay, well, I want everybody to learn about their craft. So
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I'll give everybody, X amount of dollars so they can go to a conference.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were livid. They were like, how dare you? I've been teaching for 20 years. Um, and I said, well, have you learned anything since you were last in a classroom? Like, have you done anything past that? So it just the process of getting everybody to learn, and a lot of people resigned.
Wow.
A lot of people resigned. But what we have now is a group of professionals who are very much into how do we train teachers to teach students who are in our classroom today.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I was a teacher of record was 2003. That's a long time ago.
Wow.
So even when I get, frustrated, and I remember the good old days when I was in the classroom, like I'm gonna just go back to teaching. I would need some work,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because that was a long time ago. I can't go in where I left off and think everything's fine. There were no phones
Mm-mm.
in classrooms then. It was pre-pandemic. So there's a lot of things that I would need to address. So create creatively, or how I structured it, is to get everybody on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot of work.
Right.
Yeah.
So getting everyone on the same page, I can imagine, again, like going back to the whole equity idea, right? Everybody has a different path or whatever. What do you think was your biggest challenge or hurdle? And what kinds of things did you do to address those?
The biggest challenge was to actually get people on the
Right,
same
right.
page. When you're in teacher education, almost everyone's older, the faculty, I mean.
Okay.
And a lot of the faculty are older because they've had a career, long or short, in education.
Mm-hmm.
They've been a teacher somewhere. So, unlike, your biology professor in college who may have gone all the way through, got a doctorate in biology, and then became faculty somewhere. These people got a bachelor's degree, probably taught for a while, came back, and then got a doctorate in
Mm-hmm.
education. So, you know, some of them were on the had the feeling that they didn't need anything else,
Mm-hmm.
like the person who told you they had a credential. That's all I need. And what we try to explain is that we should be forever growing and forever learning. So the biggest hurdle was to get everybody to buy into that idea.
Right.
And that took years to get everyone on board. I'm not sure everyone's still on board,
Right.
but
Right.
there are enough people on board who understand, and to give them input. And I guess that's how I solved it, is that everyone had some sort of input. So it's not just
Mm-hmm.
you do this, you do this, but
Right.
it's everyone saying, well, this is what I want to contribute to this. This is what I'd like to contribute. And just giving everybody, as much as possible, a voice in the decision making of some of the things that we're going to do.
Got it. I mean, that helps, right? To listen to the voice of all that are involved, right?
And I say that because, again, I haven't been a teacher of record since '03. Some of them have.
Right.
But additionally, I haven't been in a classroom in a long time, and they're
Yeah.
in classrooms every week.
Right.
So I need to listen to what they're saying.
Okay. So thank you for sharing where you have demonstrated artistry in your craft. Is there anything else you'd like to share along those lines?
Um,
Because you said you had a few things.
Yeah, well, the other thing I was thinking about is when I was a classroom teacher. Now, what I want teachers to understand is, at least in California, we have standards and you have to adhere to the standards. We have the California standards of the teaching profession that you have to adhere to it. Also, the standards are the rule, for lack of a better word. How you implement that is up to you. So I don't want teachers to think, oh, I got to do these 5 pages in this book. No, you don't. You have to adhere to the standard. How do you get there? So one of the things when I was very early on in the spelling, remember the spelling, you have to write the word 5 times each or whatever that was. I hated that because I was like, this makes no sense.
Because it was dumb.
Well, because then they would write, let's say island. I saw a student write I, S, 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 L, 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 L. I'm like, okay, this isn't helping you. So I got to the point where I'm like, well, these are the words you need for this chapter and this reading, and you need to know what they mean. So those would be the spelling words. But instead of asking them to spell them, the points were on how they defined it. You had to define it.
Mm-hmm.
So we used to do, what is that, $20,000 pyramid or something, where they had to give clues. Like a student would give the clues, and then the other student would have to say what the word was.
That was one of my favorite game shows.
And it's so easy to do in a classroom with no money.
Yeah.
So those are just some of the things that I did, as a classroom teacher that I really enjoyed. And that's why sometimes I think I could go back and do it, but I can't.
No, let me tell you, I still am close enough that I get to go into classrooms and I get to be with students and I get to feel that energy. Mm-hmm. And I'm still good at it, right? But the day-to-day of managing all the other junk, it is like, this is dumb, right? And having to fight all the time about, I'm teaching standards, or the content and the understandings. I'm not teaching a book, right? That's something that is an ongoing fight with pacing plans and things like that, right? So I feel you on not wanting to go back in the classroom at this point. So I talked about teachers don't know what their superpowers are. Mm-hmm. And this doesn't have to be as you as an educator, but what's your superpower or superpowers?
I am able to connect people to the right people. So people who need to meet, I can connect them. I'm like, oh, you need to meet so-and-so. Let me call him or her.
Nice. So I want to just circle back because I had the honor of coming and seeing you receive a Trailblazer Award. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came to be and the organization that you work for or worked with?
So, my program, Cal State Teach, was working with the Center for Reaching and Teaching the Whole Child. Which is a program that is really embedded in social emotional learning. Mm-hmm. When we decided to make a pivot to include more diversity, I guess, in our program, we wanted it to not be unraveled by the word diversity.
Right.
So we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that this was, and diversity also, I digress, is a large word that means more than just being Black.
Right.
It could be, diversity might be, you have a group of married people, you have a group of divorced people, you have a group of Asians, you have a group of Blacks, you have a group of short people, you have a group of tall people. That's diversity.
Right.
It's not always based on,
That's how it's been weaponized these days.
Correct. So because that weaponization had already started, 6 years ago, mm-hmm. We decided we would have a foundation based on social emotional learning. So one of the things we did was Center for Reaching and Teaching the Whole Child had a summer institute. It's actually a year institute. In the summer, they would go to San Jose, I think, University for a week. and then they'd have assignments to do virtually for the rest of the year.
Right.
We eventually sent at least 75% of our faculty so that they could be immersed in this understanding. Then we started rewriting our curriculum to include it.
Nice.
So the first thing we did was get everybody to understand what this meant. I had questions like, what is social emotional learning? What you mean?
Right.
So we got everybody on board with it. Then we rewrote our curriculum. Then we started doing presentations. Dr. Markowitz, who you met, do presentations for our faculty and mentor teachers, like on a Saturday afternoon via Zoom, that and kind of explain how this can be embedded in teacher ed and also in the classroom. So I guess that's how I got the Trailblazer Award, because we were very strategic about how we implemented this process into our program.
Strategic is such an important word. I think that there's so many initiatives and wonderful things that are out there, and they're just thrown at the wall to see what sticks. And there's so many different things going on in one place that is like, what do we focus on? What do we really get? What do we have another opportunity to get good at? So I love how there was ongoing support for what is this SEL thing, right? And that's something that we didn't have that in our in our teacher education programs, just like we didn't have a lot around special ed, right? How to support the inclusion students when that happened, right? It's like, what do I do? Like, how do I get my gen ed, right, to understand the ways in which others show up so that they're not like fighting and, teasing and all that kind of stuff. So I love that. Thanks for sharing, and congratulations again. So we're going to wrap this up in a little bit, but I always kind of want to end with what words of wisdom would you give educators, whether they be new or veteran?
First of all, just as we want this, for you to embrace the student as they come to the classroom, bring your authentic self as well, because that may be how you connect with those students.
Right.
We all heard don't smile until week 5 and don't do this and don't do that. And, speak directly to the kids who are wearing the glasses because they're the only ones who are listening. So
the craziness we were told.
Yeah, don't do that. Just, you understand that this is a profession and you need to continue to grow in it, and you're never going to stop learning. So take advantage of every opportunity that arises, be it a presentation or a conference, especially if someone else is paying for it. Please go, attend and make sure you continue to work on your craft.
Nice. So for those out there that might want to get a hold of you, where can they find you? How can they get a hold of you?
How can you?
Do you have any socials or LinkedIn that you'd like to share?
I think my LinkedIn, I think it's just my name. It might be Dr. Ernest Black. I'm on Blue Sky at the original E Black.
I love it.
Because I was so early and getting in.
So you got an E Black, nice.
That I got E Black. Instagram is eBlack66. And there's no Twitter or whatever it's called anymore.
Oh, how about your YouTube channel?
Oh, YouTube is the Blacks from Washburn. So that's a podcast my sister and I have together.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah. It's for the people wondering, it's about us being older. My sister's 60, I'm 58, and just trying to navigate this age, because I don't think any of us thought we'd still be working.
Right.
No, I definitely didn't think at 25 I'd be working at 60. I thought I would long since be retired.
You're not far away.
Yeah, but I still won't be retired at 60. And they just raised Social Security to 67, so there's that.
Right.
I'm definitely not working until I'm 60.
I'm gonna be Miss Beeman these days. Like, I'm gonna be working until people are like, "Can you stop already?"
Mrs. Beeman probably had a choice. I don't think we necessarily do.
Right. I definitely don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. So, as we close up, first of all, I really want to thank you for joining me on Christmas Day. Happy holidays, everyone. I For those who don't know, the name Inside the Teacher Studio was inspired by a show that used to come on Bravo, I think. It was called Inside the Actor Studio. And the host of that show at the end had this like list of questions that he asked all of the guests. So if you will indulge me, I'd like to ask you those questions. And you can always say, I'm not going to answer. I'll pass on that one.
Okay.
Okay, so what's your favorite word?
Black.
Not surprising. What's your least favorite word?
Cannot.
Cannot.
Actually, you know what? I have a phrase that is my least favorite phrase. Can I give that to you?
Absolutely.
You need to.
Oh my. Why? Do I still remember that when we were married? I was like, that was a trigger word right there, or trigger phrase.
It
right
is.
That was going to start a fight.
All the time. You need to. I can't
Did I
stand
say
it.
that a lot?
I don't know. But I
don't
don't
know.
like it in America. I just don't like it in the world. I don't
Right.
need to do anything. But
Right, exactly. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
you know what? Creatively, I've been reading because I'm a writer by trade.
Mhm.
I've been reading, so that gets my creative juices flowing. Just things that are abstract, art, abstract art, esoteric films,
Right, I
hiking.
remember that. What
You
was
know,
that last one?
huh?
What was the last one?
Hiking. I like to
Hiking.
hike. Yeah, and those are the things that get me going creatively.
Have you done Mission Peak up here?
No, I think we were going to, and I can't remember what happened that day.
Oh, be ready for that one. That one kicked my butt twice. The
Yeah,
second time worse than the first time, and I decided I didn't ever have to hike again.
yeah, I enjoy it. I don't have a lot of friends who like to do these sorts of things, so I'm often by myself. Or when my children come home, I'm like, let's go hiking.
I can imagine you and the younger one going to the Pacific Northwest and enjoying those hikes.
Yeah,
I don't know so much the older one, but
he'll go if we're going, but
right. That's not his thing.
yeah,
I think he's a city slicker like me.
yeah.
Anyway, what's your oh gosh, I lost it. What turns you off?
Um,
You need
no,
to.
what really turns me off is when you don't follow your own rules.
Mm,
You made the rule and you didn't follow that.
right.
I'm very likely not to mess around with you ever again.
Right. It's like, why am I talking to you?
Yeah, you're wasting my time. You don't even follow your own rules. Why am I talking to you?
Right. What's your favorite curse word?
Um,
If you were able to do that.
if I was able to curse,
I know you don't do that really.
I'm not a big curse word person, especially since I had children, because I never wanted them to hear me curse. But
Sadly, they heard your mama curse.
and I don't think that they've ever heard me say a curse word, like ever.
Never.
I don't think so. Not that I don't curse, but I just don't. It's just not. They're
Right.
not. So I guess my favorite cuss word would be motherfucker.
Right. It's such a good one.
Here, because you can use it in so many different ways.
Right.
An adjective, a noun.
And depending on the intonation, it could mean so many different things.
Yeah.
What sound or noise do you love?
I've been trying to think, is there a sound? I do like the morning bird sound.
Do you hear that in Inglewood?
Hmm.
Do you?
Yeah. Usually crows, but yeah.
Oh,
I can
okay.
I can
Crows
hear.
is different than the birds I was thinking about chirping.
Yeah. But you hear those as well because I'm up early. So
Okay.
I always hear.
Before the city awakes.
Yeah.
Got
And
it.
that's
What
my favorite
sound or
time of day, by the way.
what was that?
That's my favorite time of day.
The morning.
Yeah.
What sound or noise do you hate?
This will take you back, but the nails on the chalkboard or
Oh
the
my
chalk,
gosh.
like screech, 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 screech. I hate that sound.
You know what sounds like that to me is when people are trying to crease a piece of paper with their fingernails.
Oh,
Have you heard that?
I haven't, but what sounds like that to me is when you need to get new brakes.
Oh, true. Yeah, if you've ever like you probably haven't paid attention to it, but I'm telling you, when somebody pulls a piece of paper and my teeth, like they die. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt? I think I
I
know
want
the
to be a writer.
Yeah.
I am actually, like I said, my sister and I did a podcast and I was saying, well, I really wanted to be a writer. And I now know at this age of 58 what I was supposed to do next when I graduated from college in 87. I was like, oh, I was supposed to go here. And I just learned that this year.
Which is
So,
what?
huh?
Which is what? What do you mean?
Well, I could have gotten a master's of fine arts,
Oh, got it.
and go on that trajectory. So I was thinking that I'd go back to school and get a master's of fine arts.
I was about to say, is it too late? I mean, I know you have a doctorate.
It's never too late, and I could probably get it relatively cheap. But my sister mentioned, hey, do you think there's a certificate program you could do instead? So I found a certificate program, and I'm going to
Really?
an information meeting next week, I think.
Nice.
So we'll have to see what happens. But that's what I want to do. That's what I'd rather do. That's what I want to do in my retirement is write books.
Nice. I could see that. I'm surprised you hadn't done it like
I've
as you
written
were teaching.
stuff. Well, I've written some stuff, but most of the things I've written were professional.
Mhm. Right.
Research stuff.
Right.
And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to
Right.
write.
Creative writing. Right. Right. What profession would you not like to do?
Police officer or politician.
Ditto. If an afterlife exists, what would you like to hear your maker say when you arrive?
Where you been?
I love it. Well, again, I really, really appreciate you coming on your holiday. And you know what? This is off topic a little bit, but clearly we have a good relation, like a working relationship here. And I kind of still like my ex-husband. And we talked about we have these amazing sons.
Yeah.
What would you either advice that you would give to people that their relationship wasn't necessarily meant to be, but they are working on raising children together, or something that you thought really just like, this is why our kids are the way they are, like, you know what I mean? What do you attribute our successful children to?
That's a good question. What you have to don't leave the other parent out is what I would say. Don't go on about your life or the kids just have two different lives, but don't leave the other parent out. Make sure that they understand what's happening, what's going on. And don't get me wrong, the other parent doesn't need to know everything.
Right.
Because, maybe something that's not for them to know, but,
Right.
don't just include the other parent in the decision making.
Yeah. And I think I would say, this isn't about you, get your feelings out of it, right? Because it's not like we always, I think, intentionally partnered towards raising these young people. And we didn't always agree.
No.
There were times when we were like, nope, that's not how I think. But I think that, again, hearing the other side is important, but also it's just not about you. It's about those young folks and, put them first. So I think that we absolutely did that right. I don't know that we knew we were doing it right at the time, but now just in retrospect, I'm like, wow, we did good, Mr. Black, Dr. Black.
Yeah, they are great, great young men.
They really are. So you're going to get to see them in a little bit, but thank you again for joining. And until then, next time, join us on the next episode of Inside the Teacher Studio.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Chris.
Bye.
Thank you. Okay, I stopped the recording.
Did you?
Yay! Well,